What's up? Welcome back to Nowstalgia. Dave here with a review of Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga, the new action film from George Miller. 9 years after Mad Max Fury Road, Miller has returned to the franchise with a prequel starring Anya Taylor-Joy as Furiosa, taking over the role debuted by Charlize Theron in Fury Road. And of course, this movie comes with a lot of expectations, a lot of baggage, you could say, because Mad Max Fury Road back in 2015, only one of the greatest films of the 21st century, one of the greatest action films of all times, a complete cinematic masterpiece that was an Oscar force when it came out, but has really stood the test of time and has a really certified legacy. And making a prequel or sequel to that film, given its immense success, was going to be a tall task. And George Miller, he made 3,000 Years of Longing a few years ago, but really, he's been gearing up to make something else in the Mad Max world this whole time. And funny enough, Furiosa, this script was actually developed over many years long ago. I mean, at one point, the Furiosa movie, the Furiosa story, was going to come out before Fury Road, and then at another point, Fury Road and Furiosa were going to shoot back to back. So this is a story that Miller has, co-developed for a long time, and now we're finally getting it. 9 years after Mad Max Fury Road, Furiosa delivers as one of the great movie prequels. Does this stand up to the immense greatness of one of the greatest action films and movies of all time in Fury Road? No, of course it doesn't. But Furiosa still really brings you back to what made Fury Road so special. George Miller's amazing blend of physical and virtual effects, a sense of action filmmaking, a sense of scale, a sense of speed. It's just a visual feast once again. Some of the early concerns about the Furiosa trailer completely unfounded. This movie looks spectacular, even if there's a little bit more CGI this time around. But really the core tenet of the rhythm of Mad Max, specifically Fury Road, remains with Furiosa. This is a film with not a lot of dialogue. It's really more about action propelling your story forward. And yes, Furiosa has a lot more narrative. Furiosa, this is a much grander epic over 15 years, but I think it actually really works. Chris Hemsworth steals the show in a certain sense as Dementis, a great use of his charisma, and Anya Taylor-Joy having large shoes to fill, taking over the role of Furiosa from Charlize Theron. I think she does a great job because, once again, like Theron, Taylor-Joy commands a lot of presence with just her gaze, with just her stature, and it's exactly what you need in a role like this. Not going to be a lot of grandstanding, a lot of speechifying. Furiosa has an absolutely breathtaking set piece once again. I think the Stowaway to Nowhere scene where Furiosa stows aboard the war rig piloted by Tom Burke. And they get attacked by raiders, and they are attacking from the sky as well as the air. It's a complete evolution of the iconic sequence from Fury Road. It's absolutely spectacular. And yeah, I think maybe you can quibble with some of the narrativizing that Furiosa does, again, because it's such a grander story, and it actually skips ahead and skips across some things that are a bit maybe surprising, things you'd be interested in. I think chief among those would be the dynamic between Tom Burke's Praetorian Jack character and Anya Taylor-Joy's Furiosa. They seemingly skip ahead of her apprenticing under him and learning all the skills and the tools of the trade to be a road warrior in the wasteland. I get it though, because it's immediately following up the amazing stowaway sequence, which is the signature action set piece of the film. You don't have to then do a lesser montage version. We understand that she just picked it up and kept things going. I get it. And the other thing that they kind of skip across would be the open warfare, open conflict between Dementis and Immortan Joe. But again, I don't really mind it too much. Ultimately, it's so funny to think about how Mad Max has gotten to this point. I mean, this is a franchise that began, it's almost as old as Star Wars, right? Was it 79, the first Mad Max film with Mel Gibson? And there was such a long time between Beyond Thunderdome and Fury Road, but really, it's not a franchise that requires much investment in its lore, investment in its world building, but it is there if you're interested in it. And I think a big part of that, and why these movies, especially these two recent ones, work so well, is because the movies are just so propulsive and they're so kinetic, but they're also so coherent in terms of visually what they communicate to you, that you don't need to be super invested in the development of plot because that's not really what this movie is trying to convey to you, and that's not what this movie needs to do to sing. You think of how prequels work, right? A lot of times prequels, legacy sequels, these types of movies often feel kind of craven or like overly referential, like moments for the audience to do the Leo meme and point at the camera and say, "Hey, I got that reference." Are there moments like that in Furiosa if you want to find them? Sure, there's a few recurring characters. And Morton Joe, of course, comes back in the fold, portrayed by a new actor. The original actor has since passed. Some of his crew return as well from Fury Road. It's kind of fun, I guess, to actually go to Gastown, go to the Bullet Farm locations and characters referenced in Fury Road that we don't actually see. Kind of cool if you're in the mood for it, so to speak, as someone who is a big fan of Fury Road. But you don't need to have any reference to any of that to like enjoy these movies, to understand what's going on, to follow what's how it's going. So honestly, Furiosa really gets right to the ripping, as it were, with that first, I think, great set piece where Furiosa gets kidnapped by raiders from Dementus's crew, taken from the Green Place. You know, the Green Place that in Fury Road we only hear of as like some aspirational place that they can leave the Citadel and go find, right? Furiosa steals all of Immortan Joe's wives, frees them, and then take them to the Green Place where she was from before she was taken away. And they find that swamp, and that was all that was left. We actually see it briefly in the beginning of Furiosa in all its glory. And Furiosa gets taken, and meanwhile, one of her mothers, from the Green Place, tries to save her. Chases her down, trying to rescue her. It's an amazing sequence featuring Charlie Fraser, who made her film debut in Anyone But You as one of the girlfriends, and she's like amazing in this movie in a small role in the very first act, and just awesome, like motorcycle chase, like it's fucking cool. And to most movies, that's like the signature set piece they would have, but like that like quickly gets eclipsed, of course, as Furiosa progresses. And I gotta say, like Dementus as just a new figure in this mold, this world of the wasteland, like fits right in. And Hemsworth really, I think, wears the character like a glove, And honestly, it's kind of fitting that you have Hemsworth in a Mad Max film, arguably the most famous Australian actor, certainly right now, in the most famous Australian film franchise of all time, from arguably the greatest Australian film director in George Miller. Like, it's pretty awesome to see that kind of synergy, I guess you could say. But it's a really great use of his talents, because there's a comedic element to the performance. Obviously, Hemsworth exudes charisma, but it doesn't just feel like he's another one of the warlords of the wasteland that we come to know, like one of Immortan Joe's cronies, one of those type of people. There's like a certain like goal to his empire building, I guess you could say. Even maybe if it's a false facade, hard to say. He certainly makes blunders throughout the film in terms of managing his resources, but like it feels like a lived-in character. It's pretty cool. And unsurprisingly, like right from the get-go, when you meet Dementus and his crew, there's all kinds of Mad Max isms, right? Like crazy costume design, just weird things in the background, whether it's costume design, vehicle design, just random production design, like concepts, right? It's almost Star Wars. That's how things are just kind of in the background and intriguing, even if it's completely superficial. Like again, like you're at the Morton Joe's Citadel, it's the same kind of thing from Fury Road to now, where it's like there's just things in the background that look weird, look crazy, look ridiculous, right? Like the guy playing the guitar for Morton Joe on the rig, right? Just crazy detail, crazy fun things. Um, you know, Dementus has the guy with the devil horns. He has the history man, the old man who speaks all the tales and stuff. It's pretty amusing. Going in, I wasn't exactly sure how much like direct tie-in this would lead to Fury Road per se, but it really ends up being like a direct prequel to Fury Road. And Morton Joe and the Citadel are a huge aspect of this film. So in a sense, as a core prequel, it's pretty fun to like go back. Like we even go into the vault and see the wives chilling, like it's a lot of familiar stuff in here. But I think the Furiosa character, which again is not actually played by Anya Taylor-Joy for the first hour of the film, it's pretty great. I have to shout out Aaliyah Brown, a young Australian actress who plays young Furiosa. I think she's pretty good too. Again, it's a role rather that requires a lot of physicality, a lot of presence, because it's not a lot of lines. And I think both young Furiosa is great, but then once we make this big time skip, 15 years of Furiosa scrapping, hiding, pretending to be a war boy at the Citadel, then Furiosa now it's Anya Taylor-Joy, and I think Anya does a really nice job in the role again because she has presence, she has stature, and in the set pieces, she really stands out. Obviously, with the help of her stunt double, of course, but I think she does a great job. And it's cool now to reflect on the Furiosa character because it's now, I think, up there in terms of like great film characters played by more than one actor, and great film characters that have more than one great performance. I'm not saying Furiosa is Don Corleone, for example, but I think Theron and Taylor-Joy, both one of the great actresses of their respective generations, now both doing the part. It's pretty awesome. I've mentioned the stowaway sequence, but I really think that's like the moment in this film because it's once again a jaw dropper, like out of your body experience type thing. Much like how Fury Road goes, this takes that to the next level where it's like, how the fuck did they make something like this? Like I think that rarely, right? Things like John Wick or Mission Impossible, but like things like this with the level of practical effects of watching these explosions, that a lot of them are real, watching all these things with these cars, but now we're like in the air and we're leveling up from like the pole vaulting war boys to now we have these guys attacking from the sky in almost like parachutes, and the war rig has a mobile crane arm that's gonna fucking defend and shit. The thing in the back, I forget what they call it, that spins. Really awesome visual with the sail getting sucked in at the end. It's an epic sequence. Immediately rewatchable for sure. I want to see it again. It's so good. And Tom Burke, I think Tom Burke breaking out in The Souvenir, he actually was not the first choice for this role. It was going to be Yahya Abdul-Mateen, but he had to drop out due to scheduling conflicts. I would love to know what that was because this is a movie you want to be in. But Burke was actually pretty cool. And I think the dynamic between Tom Burke's Praetorian Jack character, who's like a veteran leader, road warrior for Immortan Joe, Jack, and Furiosa, like the dynamic that they build in that amazing sequence, like I said, you actually buy the fact that we don't see any of their future exploits together. I totally get it. And then when you take it to the next amazing set piece where they attack or end up having to attack and and flee Bullet Farm, when Dementis has actually gone ahead and taken it from Morton Joe's forces unknowingly to everyone else. That sequence is fucking awesome as Furiosa is like doing Overwatch with the sniper as Jack is driving the rig in like defense, trying to buy her time and stuff. Amazing sequence. And then leading up to, I think, like a really great like coda where Jack gets killed by Dementis once they get captured. Again, like I kind of bought their dynamic, even if we didn't spend a ton of time with it per se. And I think Dementis being demented, as it were, sadistic, you could say. They do it a few times, showing you that, and I think you buy into it. And in the process, we also get to see how did Furiosa lose her arm. Of course, in Fury Road, Charlize Theron only has one full arm. You know why now, watching Furiosa the film, although it's not like a gotcha scene perchance. It's actually, I think, done in the flow of the film, doesn't stand out as like something super obvious or anything. I thought it was pretty good, pretty well done. Obviously, very curious how the box office does for this movie. It's not going to do bad. It's going to open fine in the US, but I think the real key with this is how successful is Furiosa overseas, where, Mad Max Fury Road also is pretty successful overseas, but the movie still made, a little under 400 million, so not a massive hit per se, but certainly successful enough to justify it. And I mean, like, this is a film that is both a blockbuster, but it's also fucking art. Like the amount of craft that goes into making these movies, it's so obvious that there's so much value to it. So I'm not worried about the film performing at all. Miller says he has more stories to tell, and I think the development process of Mad Max films over the last 20 years, 25 years at this point, it's very up and down, and you can read all about that. he has allegedly been developing both a sequel to Fury Road as he was developing and getting ready to make Furiosa, the prequel. So we'll see if where we go with that. Ultimately, I think Furiosa will be successful. Curious about the Oscars as well. Of course, Fury Road really kind of cleaning up, especially on the down ballot, the way few movies can do. And now 9 years later, does it have quite that same sheen? You know, Probably going to say no, especially in a year where it's going to be competing in a lot of same categories with Dune Part 2. Like, I'm going to lean Dune getting the glory this time around, which is no shots at Furiosa at all. It's just kind of the new flavor, you could say. But yeah, I mean, to me, this is a W for everyone involved. Certainly for George Miller, finding a way to follow up Fury Road and still really wow in an awesome way. Not just doing the exact same thing again. Like, I think the fact that the narrative is a lot more expansive this time around is a big differentiator for this film. Big W for Chris Hemsworth is a great use of his talents, great use of his star power. W for Anya Taylor-Joy. I think it's another notch in her belt as one of the greats of this acting generation for sure. And W for Warner Brothers, which is having a great year just like it had a great 2023. But yeah, let me know, what did you think of Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga? How did you like it in comparison to Fury Road on its own? What's your favorite thing about it? And for more movie reviews, subscribe. And I'll see you next time.